This podcast is brought to you by Stevie Wicks.
Welcome back to the AI Analysis Podcast. We're taking a look at another episode from our friends at the Spur of the Moment podcast.
We've taken their discussion and really pulled out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the surprising facts, and, the core insights.
Yeah. And this particular episode covered a lot of ground. I mean, we're talking about everything from The Lion King and Spider-Man
Oh, yeah.
to Batman, Prince of Persia, some animated classics, and then a really significant look into the world of Dungeons & Dragons, specifically the Machina animated series.
Right. And on top of all that, it turns out this episode captured a bit of a special occasion for them.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's immediately clear this wasn't just like a regular recording session for them. It was actually a birthday celebration for one of their hosts, Jordan. You can see messages popping up in their chat throughout, people sending well wishes, noting it's his 32nd year.
And what's fascinating here is how that personal touch kind of influenced the episode's vibe. They actually mentioned potentially bending some of their usual show rules temporarily because it was a celebration. And you see the community interaction happening. Live names like Russell, Arete Media, Michael, Russ, Barry, JWR, Kate, Average Intelligence Productions, Valina S., Aurora, all jumping in to send birthday cheer.
That's cool.
There was even a specific, pretty relatable mention of the host celebrating being free from the crushing weight of debt. So, a real moment.
That definitely adds a nice layer to their format, doesn't it? Seeing that direct community connection and those personal moments woven into their usual discussion, it makes it feel more like you're kind of hanging out with them.
Yeah, exactly.
So moving into their news segment, starting with film and TV. First up, there was news about a new Lion King prequel. This one's apparently going to be a live-action prequel to the existing live-action film.
Right. The setup they talked about is Rafiki telling the story of Mufasa and Scar to Kiara, and Timon and Pumbaa are involved too.
Okay.
The hosts had really mixed reactions, though. Some were pretty hesitant about another live-action Lion King, especially hoping, maybe no singing this time, based on how the last one handled the music.
Right, I remember that.
Others were more open, kind of curious about original story content, exploring Mufasa and Scar's backstory. There was even a fun detail mentioned about Scar's potential original name being Taka, which apparently means garbage.
Taka. Wow. Okay, so why do you think there were such mixed feelings? Is it just general fatigue with the whole live-action remake trend, or is there, genuine concern about doing justice to these characters?
Well, it sounds like a bit of both, really. The first live-action remake felt almost too faithful in some ways, maybe lost some of the animated magic. So the hesitation comes from that precedent, I think.
Makes sense.
But the interest lies in the new story potential. Mufasa and Scar's dynamic before the original film, that's compelling stuff. Exploring it could be great if they handle it well.
Okay, let's talk about a big chunk of Spider-Man news they covered. First, there's the rumor, or speculation really, about Ant-Man possibly showing up in Spider-Man 4, maybe tied to some deal requiring an MCU character cameo.
Yeah, they debated this one. They were contrasting Ant-Man's potential energy seen as more comedic, maybe fitting a smaller scale street-level story with Daredevil, who was also rumored but brings a much more serious tone, obviously.
Right.
The host specifically voiced concern that Ant-Man might bring Kang-related weirdness with him after Quantumania. They seem to be really hoping Spider-Man 4 would stick to a simpler story with, and I quote, basic bitch criminals. But they did acknowledge the business side, It makes calculated executive sense if Marvel is positioning Spider-Man to be a leader for a new Avengers team. That tracks.
Here's where it gets, frustrating for fans, I think. They also discussed the Beyond the Spider-Verse delay. It's still not scheduled past next March, and the Source hosts were clearly annoyed. They described the last movie's ending as a bad ending. It just stops.
Absolutely. That cliffhanger frustration came through loud and clear. And related to the Spider-Verse, they also touched on leaks from Insomniac, suggesting a Spider-Verse game is in the works.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the speculation was it could be based on the movies, or maybe have Peter Parker joining the Spider Society. They were brainstorming potential gameplay ideas, maybe team-based, customizable Spider-Man suits, hoping it wouldn't fall into that whole games as a service nonsense. They noted how Spider-Man 2's portal tech and the tease of Green Goblin Doc Ock for Spider-Man 3 seemed to lay groundwork for this kind of multiverse stuff.
And finally, on the Spider-Man front, they brought up the animated show Freshman Year, which they correctly noted has been renamed Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. This is the one described as the not Tom Holland prequel.
Oh boy. They had a very strong reaction to this one, like really strong.
Uh-oh.
They felt the concept just makes zero sense, contradicting the established MCU timeline while still insisting it connects to Tom Holland's version somehow. Their preference was emphatically for it to be a story after No Way Home or just entirely separate.
Right.
One host basically said, stop it, stop what you're doing, just no. The explanation that it's another universe just didn't seem to satisfy their concerns about the timeline stuff.
Yeah, I can see that being confusing. Okay, shifting gears to Batman and DC news. They pointed out that Robert Pattinson's The Batman and other DC movies are heading to Tubi, which is, a free streaming service.
And this sparked some online speculation, which the source hosts noted. Some people are apparently interpreting this as a sign that Warner Brothers is headed for bankruptcy.
Wow, really? That seems extreme.
Well, yeah, the hosts didn't necessarily endorse that view, but they acknowledged that perception is out there around the move.
Gotcha. They also shared their own review of the Batman from the original show. What did they think?
Well, the likes included Robert Pattinson as Batman, specifically praising his fight scenes as fluid, and the costume's mobility was a plus. They also liked Penguin's makeup.
Okay.
Dislikes included his Bruce Wayne portrayal, finding the movie too long, suggesting it needed like an hour cut, and feeling the last scene dragged significantly.
Okay. Any specific character critiques?
Yeah, a specific point they raised was that the Riddler felt too much like the Joker in this movie, didn't quite feel like the Riddler character they know.
Interesting take.
And looking ahead, they preferred villains like Clayface or Mr. Freeze for future films over the rumored Hush. They also noted chat comments were popping up, agreeing or disagreeing with their points on Pattinson, the length, and other bits.
Right. They also touched on recent DCU changes, didn't they? Specifically regarding Shazam and the actor Zachary Levi.
They noted the widespread cast changes. Gal Gadot, Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, but pointed out John Cena still in as Peacemaker.
Okay.
Levi apparently expressed interest in returning as Shazam, but then made a comment about James Gunn's brother, Sean Gunn, who's playing Maxwell Lord in the new DCU. Levi apparently said Sean Gunn can play anyone he wants because of the family connection to the boss.
Yikes. How did the hosts take that?
Well, the source host's interpretation of that comment was pretty clear. It likely means Zachary Levi won't be back as Shazam. They also had some strong opinions on Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and the whole Black Adam Shazam situation. They felt The Rock should have been the villain in Shazam 2, and pointed out how awkward it was that the Black Adam movie seemed to completely ignore Shazam's existence, despite being set in the same world.
Yeah, that was weird.
On a positive note, though, they expressed excitement for James Gunn's Superman movie, provided it's restrained, meaning PG-13, and they called the casting for Jimmy Olsen pitch perfect.
Okay, some optimism there. Now, briefly venturing into the world of games they discussed, they mentioned news about a new Prince of Persia game, right? Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was described as potentially returning to the original, side-scroller format.
Oh, interesting.
They also brought up the long wait for the Sands of Time remake. It sounds like they have fond memories of the original Prince of Persia, even recalling how difficult it could be, maybe even having a challenging 60-minute time limit on runs back in the day.
Yeah, those old games could be tough. So, for fans, this news about The Lost Crown feels like maybe a potential return to the franchise's roots. Perhaps a different direction than the 3D era, while that Sands of Time remake is still just lingering out there.
Seems like it. A bit of old and, still waiting on the remake of the slightly less old.
We'll get back to the birthday party after a brief word from our sponsor. Okay, let's get into what they called their book report section, where they discuss things they've watched. This kicked off with a surprisingly spirited debate. Are Home Alone 1 and 2 actually Christmas movies?
Yeah, this was fun. One host argued quite strongly that they are not, despite, being set at Christmas.
Really? What was the argument?
Their argument was that the core story family goes away, kid gets left behind, defends the house from burglars, could fundamentally happen during any holiday, like Thanksgiving, for example. The only true Christmas elements, they argued, are just the setting and the music. The counterpoint, of course, is that they were intentionally filmed and released for the holiday season in November. clearly intended as Christmas films by the studio.
Right.
They threw in facts like the movie's age, 1990, 1992, John Hughes' involvement, and the first one being in the National Film Registry.
And this is where the fun fan theories came up. They got into the popular psychopath Kevin idea.
Oh, yeah. The argument that Kevin doesn't seem to show remorse for wishing his family gone and only starts trying to get them back when he's personally threatened.
Right. And inconsistencies like cutting phone lines but then using a neighbor's phone.
Exactly. And the wet bandits eventually giving up on robbing the house just to focus entirely on terrorizing this kid. The theory that adult Kevin grows up to be a trap maker for something like The Purge or Saw was mentioned as a dark but, popular fan idea.
It's a classic theory.
What was really interesting was how they used this debate to try and define what does make a Christmas movie. Their criteria seem to boil down to, does the holiday and the theme of family central to it have to be so deeply ingrained that you couldn't tell the same story without it?
Okay, so applying that.
Applying that, they decided the Santa Claus is definitely a Christmas movie. It's a Wonderful Life, they argued, is not, because only the final 15 minutes happen at Christmas.
Less controversial.
A little bit, Jingle All the Way.
Yeah.
Yes, a Christmas heist movie. The scene where Phil Hartman gets punched was even cited as a clear Christmas marker.
Huh. Okay. And finally, they tackled the age-old debate. Nightmare Before Christmas, Halloween or Christmas.
Yeah, the hosts leaned towards calling it maybe a holiday movie or perhaps Halloween cosplaying Christmas. One host admitted they just strongly disliked the movie overall, regardless of the whole genre debate.
Fair enough. Moving on to a big segment, they did a solid look into the world of Critical Role, specifically based on watching the Vox Machina animated series on Prime Video.
Right. They explained that Vox Machina adapts Critical Role's very first Dungeons & Dragons campaign.
Yeah.
They discussed the accuracy of Season 1, giving it around a 7 or 8 out of 10.
Pretty good.
Yeah, but noting the challenge of adapting because a player named Tiberius left the original game, which required the show to make some story adjustments. What's cool is they pointed out specific details added for fans of the original game.
Like what?
Like how Grog getting his specific beard look came from a magical item in the campaign, or how natural 20 dice rolls were translated into visually awesome moments in the animation, like a particular impressive shot from Percy. They even noted that some lines in the show are lifted directly from the original game session transcripts.
Wow, that's cool for fans. They also addressed Season 2, saying it diverges more significantly from the campaign.
Yeah, that's what they said. Specific differences mentioned included the party splitting up in the Fey realm in the show. Apparently that didn't happen in the game. And Grog's dramatic physical weakness and muscle loss was added for the show. In the game, he only lost a special sword in that part of the story.
Ah, interesting changes for drama, maybe.
Seems like it. They confirmed that the powerful items featured in the show, the vestiges of divergence, are absolutely something all the main characters acquire throughout the campaign. They listed examples mentioned: Grog's gauntlets, Vax's armor, Scanlan's sword, Vex's bow, Pike's shield, and Percy eventually getting a specific cloak. So that's all canon to the game.
It's fascinating how specific gameplay moments translated. They described the fight with Grog's uncle Korlak. How did that play out differently?
Well, in the game, the party actually went there looking for an item, snuck in, and Grog challenged him 1v1 while the others hid, which is how Grog's iconic line happened in that moment. And the dragon fight was adapted, although they noted a specific difference. In the game, they used a dimension door spell to enter the dragon, which is maybe less graphic than what the show depicted.
Right, understood.
A major plot point they highlighted was Scanlan having a daughter. This was apparently a huge surprise moment in the original campaign and played out very similarly in the show, leading to lots of running jokes among the players afterwards.
That must have been a big reveal. Broadening out to Critical Role in general, they noted the audio quality improving drastically from Campaign 1 to Campaign 2, the Mighty Nine.
Oh yeah, big difference. They also found it amusing that many background characters voiced by Matt Mercer in the campaign seemed to, well, look like him in the animated show.
Huh. The Mercerverse.
Kind of. And they appreciated other voice actors stepping in to play characters. Matt originally voiced himself, like Aurora, giving them their own distinct voice.
That makes sense.
What's really cool about the Critical Role world, and they touched on this, is how the campaigns are set years apart, but in the same world. So characters from Campaign 1, like Allura Vysoren, can show up older in Campaign 2.
Oh, neat continuity.
Yeah. They shared a really touching moment from Campaign 2 gameplay where the players discovered Keyleth's mom, who they thought was dead in C1, was actually alive. That led to genuine player reactions, hoping for a happy reunion. It shows the strength of the overarching narrative, how character stories pay off across hundreds of hours.
That's incredible storytelling, really. They wrapped up that section by echoing the source host's recommendation to check out Critical Role itself and also the Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie, calling it a great example of the D&D experience.
Mm-hmm. They even brought up the idea of an animated Baldur's Gate 3 spin-off and potential crossover, noting how the concept of different planes of existence in D&D lore makes those kinds of connections totally possible.
The possibilities are endless there. And there you have it. We pulled out insights from movie news, industry chatter, debates about holiday classics, and our really detailed look at translating tabletop RPGs to animation.
Yeah, the value is getting those core points, the interesting discussions, and those surprising little details from what was clearly a lengthy chat, all distilled for you quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It really highlights how adaptation is such a balancing act, sometimes being incredibly faithful to the source material in unexpected ways while making necessary changes for a new format.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this session. If you're curious to hear the full discussion, the back and forth, and really experience that birthday energy, you should definitely check out the original show this transcript came from, the Spur of the Moment podcast.
And this whole discussion kind of raises an important question to consider, doesn't it? How much does it matter to you when an adaptation makes changes to something you know well? And does it make a difference to your enjoyment if those changes feel deliberate, maybe even include little nods or details pulled directly from the original source material, like those Vox Machina examples?
Definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
Until next time.
So today's episode is sponsored by the Spur of the Moment podcast, everybody. Come join us every Saturday. We're going to do this. We're going to sit here. We're going to talk about the news. Time to talk about the Minecraft.
Okay.
It looks
So,
bad. We're going to talk about movies. That new Joker movie is apparently terrible, and I want to see it so badly because I hear it's awful. We're going to make some jokes. We're going to have some laughs.
There's a lot of funny jokes in there. There's a lot of weird jokes in there. The Channing Tatum one will always make me laugh. Especially when you hear the behind the scenes stuff, like when you hear the behind the scenes story of how they just phoned them up.
We're occasionally going to have other people along for the ride.
A really fun fact, though, is I learned last year that that Coraline was and not Disney.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I can see why you would make that mistake. Yeah. Because it does seem like it's a different. And to be fair,
that would be a horrifying, terrible Disney movie.
It would be because yeah. And we're just gonna have a generally good time. George, do you have anything else you want to say about our podcast? Make people watch it.
We watch movies. Sometimes we watch shows, but we always have fun.
Here
On the Spur. 3, 2, 1. On the Spur of the podcast moment.
Yeah, we nailed it. Nailed it.
Podcast.
Yeah. It's Spur of the Moment podcast every Saturday. We nailed it.
You can expect awesome content like that.
We cut flawless promos every single week.